This evening we have three presenters. The first presenter will be coming to us from a remote location. We have Fred Hidazi from City Gate. The second presenter will be George Sundell from Sundance Associates. And the third presenter will be Mike Zuba from Malone and McBroom. Fred, are you with us?
I am.
Fred, I'm now turning the audience over to you. We have an audience of approximately 25 to 30 individuals, and we may have more coming in the door as you are speaking. But as you know, we are videotaping this and audio recording it, and you are communicating with us from a remote location. It's all yours.
I appreciate it. I guess there's something to be said about doing remote presentations. You're not as affected by the weather. So I get to go first because of that. I appreciate you guys selecting us to do this presentation tonight. I'm Fred Hidazi with the firm of Citygate GIS, and I'm going to go through a brief presentation about our qualifications with regards to this type of work, as well as try to cover how we would go about doing this particular project. So this is the agenda for the areas that I'm going to cover tonight. Basically, as I mentioned, our qualifications, our project approach, and then answer to some of the questions that we had received. So just to talk about the company was started in 1986 as a technology company specializing in redistricting and school planning. So almost all of our software that we develop has to do with schools and or redistricting, things having to do with supporting school technology for bus routing, public engagement, and decision support. We've been doing really redistricting and demographic analysis for over 15 years continuously. We've done K-12, school boards, city council, water districts, congressional. We've done software and data services for hundreds of clients nationwide, as well as actually we did all of Canada. We've done even work overseas. We've supported litigation, citizen commissions. We were the redistricting vendor for the state of Pennsylvania, both in 2000 as well as 2010 legislative redistricting cycles. So pretty much anytime you have a piece of geography that you want to cut up, our technology is somehow involved in doing that. As a sort of list of past customers, I put a couple of school districts near the top because they're similar to the size of you guys. City of Winchester in Virginia is one that we're just about to finish. Actually, they passed their plan this past Tuesday, so their final plan. So now we're actually just producing the final maps, and after that, we're basically done with this project. They're a school district of about 8,000 students overall, and they had 4 elementary schools. They were building a new one and closing one, so they were looking to have redistricting done. We also did grade configuration for them and came up with some alternatives, both from new grade configurations as well as a new redistricting plan. We did City of Austin about 2 years ago. Harford County Schools in Maryland is about 35,000 students. Prince William County is about 80,000 students school district. St. Mary's County in Maryland is a 15,000 student school district. We're also in the process of doing another school district in Virginia called City of Manassas. They're, again, a little bit bigger than you guys, but not much. And for them, we're also doing grade configuration, redistricting, as well as doing their capital improvement plan for the next 10 years. At the state level, I've put the list of all the sort of larger customers we have, and ranges. We've worked with about 40 states altogether. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of experience when it comes to redistricting. So from an understanding on the project, obviously we're looking to do a 10-year population projection for the district. create enrollment by the district as well as by the school, do a 5-year enrollment plan by school and grade, review, analysis, and analyze the charter, cyber, private, and parochial schools in the area and how kids go in and out of the system, identify, plan, and propose residential development. And we've done that really in almost every redistricting plan we've ever done, to the point of actually when there's a new development going out to the developer, finding similar developments to what they're putting in to make sure that we get the right number of student yield out of a particular residential development. Obviously, a single-family residential area generates more kids than a retirement community. So we look at the actual development and try to figure out the yields that come out of these things. We look at population growth trends, and we work very closely with the Census Bureau so that we know what some of the trends from the American Community Survey are for each area of the country. We actually have that data in-house. We determine the school building capacities and space utilization with work that we do with the school. We look at the number of students per teacher. We look at different arrangements of capacity. You know, the capacity numbers kind of range between what you have in the school right now and what you can possibly have. One of the things, for example, we're doing in Manassas is at the high school level, we are changing the configuration so that the teachers are not actually sitting in their classrooms when they're not having classes. Right now, their utilization is at 75%, and we're trying to push that up to 90% by having the teachers work in offices and reusing the teaching facilities on a more regular basis. So we look at all these different options and come up with capacity ranges for the different schools. Project understanding, the second phase of it is actually creating planning units for analysis. Those are going to be the building blocks that you use for creating the districts. If you think about Legos, you basically create the bricks that you're going to put together to make the districts out of them. We compare existing zone boundaries. We look at transportation costs and busing times. Our tool sets include a bus routing application. So our company markets a product online called Route-A-Bus. And that application is used for looking at transportation times and individual routes and see how they're impacted by the redistricting plan. We provide analysis between current routes and the cost for the proposed routes. And we provide and use applications to dynamically show the results of boundary changes. Finally, we look at how many students are affected by each of the proposed shifts, and we generate those reports at the end of the process, which is actually what we're in the process of doing for the city of Winchester. I just sent them a spreadsheet that shows all their student lists, name, addresses, and their parents' names, as well as which school districts they were and which ones they'll be going to next year, so they can generate mailing lists from that spreadsheet and be able to send those to the parents as notification. So in a high-level overview of the project, we start with database development. That typically includes geocoding the students. Geocoding is the process of taking their addresses and finding the location, much the same as what happens when you type your address in Google to get directions. We do that for all the students. Then we generate the projections, so we know where the kids are. We look at your historic trends. We look at the different demographics that affect the future. If there's new developments going in, we keep track of those, and we generate the projections based on all the information that we collect. Finally, we also develop base GIS layers. Those are going to be your mapping layers, things like city boundaries, existing school boundaries, school locations, locations of routes, bus stops, and any other demographic information which the city and county and townships are going to provide us can use during the process. We take that information and we use it to create enrollment projections. That includes capacity analysis, space utilization review, and developing forecasts on the enrollment. That information then feeds into the attendance area redistricting process, which involves creating alternatives, looking at how that affects bus routes, and presenting the results back to you guys for review. And a part of that is also accepting comments from the public. We do that in two ways, which I'll get into. One is through having public hearings, and the second one is we actually have a piece of software that allows you to allows members of the public to give comments back on certain parts of the map. So I'll actually go into that in a little bit more detail. Once the plan is approved, and then we go through a process of dissemination, which is creating maps and reports, creating web pages that show where the new boundaries are, supporting any final hearings that need to be done, and support transportation, routing, and whatever needs to do to update that. And we finally transition this to the school district, which involves installing copies of our software there so that if any adjustments need to be made in the future, the school district can do it. We provide all the data, any training and support that's needed to follow on the project. So on the database development, as I said, we're first and foremost a technology company. So everything that we do is we have software and tools that we not only sell to customers that want to do this work themselves, but use internally when we're doing a project ourselves. So on the enrollment projection, our tool supports two different types of projection. One is called a cohort survival, and the other one is called the dwelling yield method. So we look at both of those because one does not give you necessarily an accurate view of the future trends. So cohort survival relies on past trends on pupil going from one grade level to another grade level. So if traditionally when kids go from grade 4 to 5, you have an increase of 1% or a decrease of 2%, then we look at that as a trend, and then that's how we increase or decrease the students going forward. The dwelling yield method looks at historical yield from different types of zoning. So if an area is zoned for single-family homes, 1 acre lots, and that generally creates 2 kids per acre, then we look at similar types of zoning across or similar types of land use across the city, and we use that as a means of forecasting. That allows us to not look at necessarily where the kids are today, but look at 5 years down the line, an area that is single-family homes that may not have necessarily kids coming from there, may at that point have the houses turn over and have new families move in that have kids. So that allows us to look at also the possibility of where kids may be coming from in the future that are not there right now. As far as geocoding, we use what's called a multi-tier geocoding process. That really allows us to do 2 things. One, capture the students in typical addresses, like 123 Main Street, but it also allows us to capture kids that may not necessarily be in single-family homes. They may be in shelters, sometimes they're in hotels. So we capture all of those kids to make sure that we know we've tracked everybody. We also, during that process, identify out-of-district students. That typically includes both kids that may be outside of the school boundary itself or are in the school boundary but going to the wrong attendance area, and that happens fairly frequently. We also look at creating demographic reports that show trends in how the demographics of the city may be changing. As far as redistricting itself goes, we have a desktop application called Autobound, which is the most widely used desktop tool in the U.S. for doing redistricting. And more recently, we have actually switched to a tool that we use on the web. Now, the project I mentioned with the city of Winchester was the first time we actually used the web redistricting. And originally, it was just a viewing. We had thought about it as a viewing tool. We would show the plans on the web and allow the school board members to view it. But they really liked it, and they wanted to actually make edits to the plan themselves. And the software does support that. So the school district started using that tool very heavily, and eventually, actually, the plan that was adopted was one that was created by one of the school board members on his own. So it was they took the base plan and modified it, and that's the plan that ended up getting adopted. They also had us create accounts for members of the public. So the software allows members of the public to create logins and be able to create plans and submit them. So we had about probably not too many, about a half a dozen people that signed up, and we created accounts for them, and they went ahead and created plans. It's very simple to use. It's kind of point and click, and it's really designed. If you can use Google Maps, you can use this software. So you just kind of click around, and as you make the adjustments, there's a table at the bottom that updates and shows you what the total number of students are in that particular school and shows the capacity. And we also had to show up the number of free and reduced lunch for a particular school, so that as the school board members were looking at it, they could see sort of what the makeup of that school would be. These are some examples of the types of maps and reports that we create. The one on the top shows sort of growth patterns for students at different grade levels. This was for elementary schools. It shows by grade, as well as free and reduced lunch, as well as the actual demographic information, racial demographics. It's important to know sort of some of the demographics of the city, because even though Pennsylvania is really not an area where you necessarily need to worry about these, it's not a southern state essentially. There has been cases where you inadvertently create non-diverse demographic school zones, and then you get into trouble with the Justice Department. That actually happened to a school district near us recently, and there was a complaint filed with the Justice Department, and the Justice Department reviewed the school district's plan, and even though they had created it without looking at any types of racial information, it turned out that the way they had picked the neighborhoods created really a very racially packed school district. So it's always good to know sort of what the demographic makeup of the city is as you're drawing these districts. As far as public engagement goes, I mentioned we do it both in a traditional public engagement. That picture at the bottom was when we did the city of Austin. We did about 10 hearings for that one. So there were ones that were done all over the city at each of the attendance areas. The one on the upper left is the output from our application, and this was for City of Indianapolis, and they actually posted those up right out of our software onto their website. And on the upper right is the tool we have. It's called iOpen Engage. What that tool allows the public to do is actually click on places on the map and leave comments. And they can choose to be contacted. They can leave their phone number or leave notes anonymously. But the comments are validated. So the comment, it sends you an email. Then you have to validate that you actually made the comment, so that we don't end up with one person making 100 comments. Finally, on the transition side, as I mentioned, we do have a bus routing application. We identify the affected students. We update the student database. We allow you to generate mailing lists and support update of the bus routes. The two pictures at the bottom are from a bus routing application that allows you to create new stops and routes based on the new districts. So for us to get started, we have all the tools we need to do this. It's not we don't have to go out and get any of this stuff. We do this type of work on a regular basis. As I said, we're finishing up Winchester. We're midway through City of Manassas, so we have all the tools in-house and all the personnel that we need to do this. A brief overview of why select us. Really, we have in-depth experience in doing this successfully. So we've done work all over the U.S. As I said, we're doing a lot of work right now in Virginia, but we've done plenty of work in Pennsylvania as well. We have worked with the Department of Justice. We have both tools for the desktop as well as online. We are local driving distance to you guys. Our technology has been used for 15 years in all manners of national projects, and we support tools for public engagement that allows to really get a feel for how members of the public feel about a particular plan. We have bus routing, enrollment projection, redistricting, and public engagement, as I mentioned, as far as the technology stack goes. So I think I am within a couple of minutes of my 30-minute time slot. I don't know if you guys are hosting questions or not, but if not, then I guess I'm finished.
Fred, we're not hosting questions, but I do want to say thank you for your time this evening and certainly for jumping in advance of your original slotted time. Therefore, if you're complete, we're complete with you, and we'll sign off.
All right, very good.
Thank you.